to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Jesus reminds us to watch for the signs of his return. Today we will explore further what we are seeing in our times that line up with what signs he said would indicate the potential of the end and his return. We will also discuss the practical meaning of this as we watch and as a remnant prepare as he so leads. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. This is End Times Friday. So lots and lots going on. We got some big time developments that have happened in this last week or so. We're taping this a little bit ahead, just a week or so ahead. So it's pretty current stuff. So we'll share a little bit about that. And
excellent.
As we, I don't know if anybody tends to, observe, the news, information of the news, just typical information, but it's really becoming ludicrous. What happens?
That's a great word for it. Yes.
And it almost makes you laugh now. Of it. For example, the government, just came out and said the U.S. road system is racial. That it causes trouble for non-whites, and it's
the road system itself.
The road system itself, and so it's kind of nutty, when you think about it, because I think we all use the same roads, and I don't think there's any intention of building roads or things that are racial in any way, but it's indicative to me. And we're not denying that there's racial issues in America for sure. So
yeah, because there absolutely are. Right.
But it's applying everything to that term. If you don't agree or if you want to make a statement, well, it's racial, even when it's really obviously not even racial. It's something else. But that's a convenient way to do it. So it's just funny to me when you read stuff like that literally people are saying and thinking it, believing it. And it's just nutty. So
yeah. I do wish when it comes to everything, I wish that there was healthy dialogue on such things. Like if there is genuinely somebody feeling that, I wish that there was a safe space for people to discuss why are you feeling that? What are you feeling? What's going on with that? And that's just another part to me of the lunacy of so much of what's going on is you're not allowed truly to just have healthy conversation and understand where one another is coming from. And I think so much would be cleared up, but we've got the crazy world going on. So it is what it is.
Yep. So a couple big things that are happening, and they're really monumental. We had remember that really good discussion we had the last couple times that was sharing about how to look up your bank.
Yes, that was so useful, I think.
For stability and potential problem that your bank could fail. Now remember, there's 150 banks on the that stated 150 banks are on the watch list. 156 actually. They introduced, and I gave the 6 that they stated, and then they were told stop saying anybody specifically, because that's going to cause people to withdraw money, which will actually accelerate the collapse of the bank. So they don't want to do that while they try to manage it, but they can't get around certain things happening, and banks that have and we there's a category that we showed, commercial real estate loans. When they have a high number of those, automatically they're rated in trouble.
Right. For valid reasons right now in this economy. Yes.
Yeah. Because and and it just came out. An article just came out actually yesterday about that defaults on commercial real estate is they call it imminent and going to accelerate. And the simple reason is that the U.S., because of what happened with COVID and then the restructuring of how people work, don't need as much office space.
Right.
Just in general. So companies that had leases, they were paying those leases, but now they're at the point where they're going to be ending those leases and not renewing those leases. Already, for example, I think I mentioned this before, in New York City, there's 100 million square feet of empty office space already. That's just New York City. Multiply that, across the nation. So it's going to be literally probably a billion plus of empty office space that is not going to get filled. See, that's the issue.
Right.
Because even if the economy expanded, which, by the way, is going the other direction, the corporate life now has come where we do either remote and or hybrid, where we just don't need that much office space.
Yeah, COVID really did restructure how we work.
Yeah. So it's imminent. So as a result, and I'm just going to highlight, they say that the bank failures could result from that. Here are the companies that they're saying are basically in trouble because of it.
Oh, great. I'm glad you found a list.
Citizens. And by the way, it's a big homeowner.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Mortgage company. Morgan Stanley, big investment bank. U.S. Bank Corp, U.S. Banks. A lot of people have money in that one. And as a result of it, they're saying that their losses are going to accelerate for sure. And is that going to cause their system to be in a place where they can't sustain it? And I think we talked about that. Likely, the prediction is that the banks are going to basically mostly all fail, maybe on purpose, to get down to 5 or 6 banks that really run the whole show.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I was reading an article just on the heels of you sharing last week that was talking about how J.P. Morgan and Wells Fargo in particular, and I believe there was one other I can't remember, was really strengthened as a result of the SVB, just in how things stepped in and what they were doing. That gave them a more solid influx of capital and cash than they have had previously. So I was thinking about that, as you say, some are going to rise up and be much stronger in the midst of all this, and several others are going to fall away.
Yeah, and by the way,
we're already seeing a little bit of that.
By the way, yes and no. Wells Fargo is one that's listed on the commercial real estate worry loan.
Is it? Interesting.
As they had a short-term advantage, but they're structured they're set up as a potential failure, and another bank called
because of the commercial real estate.
Yeah, M&T Bank is another one. So
that's a big one we see a lot.
Yeah. So again, it would just be if you have money in banks, you are protected up to $250,000 per person per individual account. Social Security number or EIN number. So, make sure that you are, and then in the meantime, have the fortitude to look and see where does your bank stand, and see if God would have you, do something different. And again, it's just wisdom. And remember, the Holy Spirit's job is to tell you of things to come.
Right.
And the way he does it, by the way, is to pay attention. And because of for me, when I see something, I receive that as pay attention, and I also don't act until I get confirmation from God. So it's not like, I have to. No, it's just, that's interesting. Particularly when
make it highlighted.
Particularly when right away. See, my bank was listed publicly, which, by the way, it isn't anymore because they took it off. But it was listed in one of the 6 banks right away that's in trouble, and God said, "Pay attention." And so, okay, I'm doing it. And I haven't, come to any final conclusions yet, but I am evaluating that, looking at that, getting information, looking at some alternatives. What does that look like, and who can I do that with? And partly for me is that we need some personal banking because of certain things that we do, particularly with wires and move things around. So I got to be able to have a bank that isn't just a mechanical bank; it's somebody that actually has a person that cares.
Right,
so,
right.
So I have to, have to search for that and look for that. So we are, and we're, paying attention because it's a heads up of, well, wait a minute. And he says, God says one thing. He says, don't put your head in the sand, so that when I show you something, just be on alert, look into it, seek it, seek information. Don't conclude yet.
Right.
So we say, oh, well, then I have to. No, but at the same time, don't ignore it.
Right. Right.
Say, wait a minute, and this, I'll just give you an example. I've dealt with executives that they get a signal that the company that they're working with is going to downsize, or is in trouble, or has issue, and they talk about it. I see that, and see what I say is, okay, do you understand that God has given you a heads up? And you may want to look at what does he have to say about that, which could be get your resume, spruced up and start looking to move, because you're going to be the subject of a layoff, or you're going to be terminated, not even because you're doing lousy work, but rather just they're going to restructure things, which happens all the time, by the way. And again, a lot of people just, well, God will take care of me. And I keep saying, well, this could be the way God's going to take care of you. With the and it's a funny little, it's a joke story, but it's somebody that's in a flood and they're on their roof, and a boat comes along. Hey, get in the boat. We're going to go. No, I'm waiting for God. Another boat comes along. No, I'm going to wait for God. And then a helicopter comes and said, here, get in, let's go. No, I'm waiting for God. And then they die. And they go to heaven, and they said, what happened? I thought you were going to save me. And God says, well, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter.
we do act that way sometimes, though, right?
So it's a heads up. And again, it's just pay attention without your own conclusion. So that's kind of important. But don't be lazy about it. When God says, hey, you see something's going on, and then, by the way, these people that say God's going to take care of me, they get terminated, and now they're in trouble, and they have to start from scratch, looking, and ultimately, they do. God does, care about them, because if they have a heart to follow, they do. But they could have done it a lot easier, faster, and simpler if they would have just paid attention to the signal that God said, and particularly when somebody can come along, which is what our fellowship is all about, of reinforcing that. Another issue that is big time news, this is big news, is Saudi Arabia basically linked up. We were talking about this before, that they've linked up with Russia, China, Iran, Syria, and Turkey, who are all Shiites, and then, of course, Russia and China, to go off the petrodollar. But they just came out this week and said, we're putting Israel on notice that we're going to be against them. Now they've been for them this whole time. Primarily,
this is big because this is part of the entire. That's part of things lining up right there. That everyone will come against it. We're seeing a significant shift.
It happened. We saw it happening, but now they kind of made it official, and basically said to Israel, don't come against any of the Muslim countries at all. They've been supporting them, keeping the Shiites at bay, and now they're lining up with the Shiites, and now they're both coming against Israel, and they made it official, and so it's big news, because in the end, and this was a question I had, is that I knew in the end that this was so. I saw the movement of the Sunnis around Israel supporting them in a big way. And even linking up with them with treaties, etc. The one thing that I always wondered about is the Saudi Arabia, who is the biggest country and the most economically favored country. said they were going to do a treaty with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, we support you, but they never actually did a treaty.
Interesting.
So I was wondering about that. Are they really going to do that or not? And then if and when, are they ever going to pull away from Israel because
Right.
of just what we know about the end?
We know it
And
will happen at some point.
it's going to
when.
happen.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I wonder when that's going to happen, because I know it's going to happen. How is it going to happen? And to me, this is lightning speed shift that they're lining up with Gog and Magog, China and Russia,
Right.
and all the other Middle Eastern countries that ultimately have to come against Israel, and they just stated they're coming against them.
Wow. That's fascinating right there.
Yeah, so that's a big deal. And as we look at the implication of that, and it really has to do with in our response to that, is let's go to Luke chapter 21 and read verses 29 through 38. Luke
29 to 38.
Luke 21, 29 through 38.
Then he spoke another parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. They are already budding. You see for yourselves that summer is now near. You also, when you see these things happening, know that the kingdom of God is near. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. But take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and cares of this life, and that day come on you unexpectedly. For it will come as a snare on all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch, therefore, and pray always that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. And in the daytime he was teaching in the temple, but at night he went out and stayed on the mountain called Olivet. Then early in the morning all the people came to him in the temple to hear him.
Yep. So he's, by the way, talking about the end, and a lot of people are interested in the end. Hey, tell me about that. He says that, well, when you see the leaves budding, and again, he's on the fig tree, he's referring to Israel, coming back as a country. Well, you know that summer is near. So basically, what I would say, it's now in play and it's going to happen. Pay attention. And of course, our definition of near is always different than his.
Very different than what his is too. Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, great. Well, then it looks like hey, with this happened with Saudi Arabia, it's going to happen any time now. Well, it could, but likely, it's still just watching. And he says that the generation will not pass away until these things take place. So that it implies that when this occurs, you begin to see, this generation, which would be 40 years, would probably see all of this happen. And again, Israel itself said they weren't a nation until 2012. So we may be in that time. And then he says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. So what I say and the truth of all that I am, which come from my words, is going to last, and it's going to be so, in eternity. So basically, when he says that, pay attention, therefore, to what he says.
Right, right.
And he says, so as a result of that, and then he goes on to say, he says, be careful, basically not to be negligent of just only your individual, personal, current, present cares of life, and only care about that. He says, because the day is coming, and if if you aren't watching, you're going to be surprised, and thinking everything was fine or everything's going to be okay, but it really isn't, because you haven't been getting ready for what God says I'm showing you, which he then says, by the way, because of that, it's going to happen to everybody on earth, so you're not exempt. He said, watch and pray, and this is your prayer, that we be counted worthy to escape the things that will come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. So it implies a couple things. If we are to escape he's saying that it might be important not to assume that, first of all, it doesn't matter because, and this is where a lot of people have gone, yeah, we're going to be raptured anyway.
Right.
So what difference does it make? I can just keep focusing on my cares of life, and someday, it's going to be gone, and then, hey, the tribulation's coming. And God's implying here, maybe not. Maybe we're going to be here during this time, and so we won't escape it. And then, by the way, I think also it implies the mark of the beast is that if we're here, be careful that you don't take the mark of the beast, because that even solidifies further, the implication of that, which could be that we even wind up living during God's wrath. And again, we're not saying we know exactly because it's not specified exactly, but
right.
He just says, pray that you're counted worthy so that you can escape all things. Okay, now let's look at what worthy is, then we'll come back to a question. Go to Colossians. We actually talked about this in our time of prayer, which we just ended, by the way, our series, series on prayer.
Worthy, right?
Yeah,
what is it to walk worthy?
Read verses 9 through 12 of Colossians 1.
1, 9 through 12. Says, for this reason, we also, since the day we heard of it, do not cease to pray for you and to ask that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will and all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that you may walk worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God, strengthened with all might according to his glorious power for all patience and long suffering with joy, giving thanks to the Father who has qualified us to be partakers in the inheritance of the saints in the light. He has delivered us from the power of darkness. That's good.
Okay. Yeah, just right there. So he says being counted worthy is being filled with the knowledge, the experience of his will, with all wisdom and all spiritual understanding, fully pleasing him, which you had gone into and discussed. That means a walk of faith, which means this is why I think he says my words are gonna last, in that you need to pay attention to what I say, because I'm going to ask you to believe it by faith, which pleases me, to trust what I have to say. And he says, so walking worthy instead of, he says, just focusing on your own decisions about life.
Right.
Is really to be counted worthy is you have to seek me, God speaking, seek my will, seek understanding, seek wisdom, walk by faith by listening to what I have to say. If you do that, he says you'll escape the consequences of stuff.
Which really comes back to abiding.
Which comes back to
staying
abiding.
with him and just asking him, what do you have to say? How do you want me to walk? What do you need here?
Yeah. And think of the opposite. If you don't pray that you count yourself worthy and follow what he just said, you won't escape it. You're going to be part of it. That's a big consequence, And so he's trying to make a big time statement. Is it's really, really important to watch and to put these things together, and just like we're talking about with what's happening with Israel and what's happening with the economic system, is really watch and start to pay attention and not rely even on what other people think you should do, but rather things are happening, and if you're seeking his will, see, God will speak to you personally.
Right.
And say, here's
I'm
what
going to highlight what you just said there, just to reiterate. You just said, not looking at all this and seeing what other people say what you have to do, but taking it to God and him instructing you on what you need to do. That's a big deal, because I think what a majority of Christians who are watching, have a heart to watch and realize there's a reason to watch, are right now taking I would call it the lazy way, not to be mean, but the lazy way of let someone else tell me exactly what I need to do in order to navigate this time. And there's plenty of quote unquote prophets out there to tell you what you should do and to send you into panic mode and to all of this. And what they're not telling you is go back and ask God personally for your personal instruction. I think you need to be wary of that.
Yeah. And also then the other side of it, which is either not care of, I can just live the way I want to anyway, because God doesn't really care anyway, or there's a false faith. And a false faith is, well, God will take care of me no matter what. And God says, well, that's not really true. Is that if you don't count yourself worthy, and worthy is what? Seeking my will, really, surrendering your will to mine.
Surrendering my will to yours, yes.
Then I'll have you escape it. And if you don't, he's trying to say it's pretty significant. Don't assume just because you're a believer that you escape, because that's the quality. He said the quality is, yes, you're a believer, you have the privilege of it. He said the key to it is to actually seek my will. And that's why we have, abiding and discerning God's will and all these, courses that are available for people. So we just want to highlight that he says, watch and pray. Interesting enough, the prayer is that you're counted worthy. And counted worthy, I'm praying that may I have the ability, desire, and spiritual activity to be able to discern your will. He said, now you're considered worthy, and by the way, walk by faith. So we'll continue this next time when we'll get into even more about being faithful ourselves. But it's really important as we consider this and just realize, even just this last week, there's big stuff happening.
Right. Lots of movement is taking place. We need to pay attention.
And we just need to pay attention and not be negligent. So we'll pick this up again next time.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks for sharing. As always, it's great to get your take on these things, and just reminder for everyone to be walking worthy and just be abiding with him.
Amen.
Have a great day. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
See you. Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.